Good morning, Aries. How are you? Well, it's morning here. As I speak to you, the moon is at 8 degrees Gemini. So we're 6 degrees off the new moon in Gemini that happened last night. I will be doing your reading for this new moon. I'm going to start, this is my Mercury deck. So I'm going to pick 3 advice cards here for the end. This is going to be really where to be looking for the messages in this period, since that's what Gemini is really about. And then I'm going to shuffle the cards while I talk about the sabian symbols, so I don't waste time by doing those separately. But so right now, so as I said, I'm going to start with 3 advice cards face down for Aries for the new moon. So right now the sun is in Gemini, the moon is in Gemini, Mercury is in Gemini, Venus is retrograde in Gemini, and the North Node is in Gemini. Now, for anyone who has Gemini in their chart or knows some Geminis, you know that that's a lot of Gemini coming at you. And if you consider that there's 4 planets, 5 placements, and each of them are twins, that's 10 sets of antennas or antennae that you have coming at you. So in this Gemini period, we can feel scattered, kind of like you've put your finger in the electricity plug. There can be a lot of information that's being shared and received. People may be it's kind of also like Page of Swords energy, so delivering it with a little less tact and maturity than perhaps we would like. And that can come for how we say things and how we hear people say things. And so here's the interesting thing. You know, I like to start off with where the degree, the sabian, finds itself as a guidance for what the overlying message is. And the way we read sabians, and I'm going to put a link to the founding story of the sabians because they're quite interesting. But the way we tend to read them is that within the astrological chart, when it hits a degree, up until 5 minutes of that degree, we'll still count it as the degree before. After 5 minutes, it becomes the 3rd degree. So this moon was at 2 degrees, 5 minutes, which is literally the cutoff between the 2 and the 3. Now, and this is why I think that's interesting. What do you do when it's at 2:05? Do you read the 2 or do you read the 3? And some people will have been taught that you would read the 2. Others will read the 3. So it's at a point, and this is what I think is important and what Gemini is going to be teaching us. It's at a point where it depends. The information depends. And actually, if you talk about all the mutables, like Gemini is here to teach us that information is contextual. Nothing is ever, or there are some like natural law things that are absolutely true. You are going to get wet if you stand under the rain. But for the rest of it, thoughts, words, opinions, everything is contextual. And if I have been taught that you read 2:05 as the 2, that's my truth. And if I have been taught that you read 2:05 as the 3, that's my truth. And neither one of us is right or wrong because that's not a scientific, it's a man-made concept. It's a channeled concept, the sabians. So there can't be an absolute truth to which one is right and which one is wrong. And so we find ourselves at sort of this point where it's almost like anybody could be right depending on the context in which we find that information. And it's very much like readers, right? Readers read according to the skills that they have in their skill set. I am someone who looks at patterns, which is why I need to use lots of different decks because I see the patterns in the communication. Some people are like, that's insane, you only read one deck. One's not right, one's not wrong. They're both based on the context of knowledge that we have. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of confronting of opinions where the truth is neither one is right or wrong. And I'll start talking about these in a minute. And it's simply based on the context in which that person that you're talking to sees the world, right? And what's happened to them. So it's going to be very much about getting information that may be sort of ambiguous, that can be interpreted in one way or another, and relying on your intuition, excuse me, and your experience to understand what is true for you. And also understanding that what is true for you may not be true for someone else. Hold on, I'm just looking at my notes because I want to make sure I said everything. Now, the 2 degrees that we're actually hindering, or right in between, are actually both really nice. The degree at the 2 is Santa filling stockings furtively, which goes to talk about that dynamics that we had. You know, we saw the hidden dynamics at work last week. In this end of the month. So that talks to that. The other one is the charming court life at the Garden of the Tuileries in Paris, which is a very lovely Venusian image. And so they're both nice, these 2 degrees. There are some that are, you could be stuck on 2 degrees that are way worse. So it's like it's kind of like at the end of the day, either way you look at it, if you look at the 2 or you look at the 3, there's still nice news that's coming forward. It's just a question of how you choose to see things. For some people, it will be things moving, hidden dynamics. For others, it will be much more apparent because it's a lovely sunny day in the park. And that's kind of also, you know, this lockdown thing is some people are loving it and some people are going crazy. So it really depends on the way you look at the world and your path. Now, another thing is we are in eclipse season. The first eclipse is coming. Let me just call this up so I don't get the dates wrong. And this is the second eclipse of the year. There's 6 eclipses this year, so really a full year, this 2020. The first one is on June 5th. It's in Sagittarius. Then we have, and that's a lunar eclipse. Then we have a solar eclipse in Cancer. And another lunar eclipse in Capricorn on July 5th. And those will wrap up that Cancer, the Cancer eclipses, which have been rough, and they were rough 10 years ago, in 2009. They were rough again this year. The Gemini Sag ones are a little bit easier because it's more about information as opposed to our roots, our angular houses. So we are now in eclipse season. So expect a lot of things to be coming at you. Now, okay, so I'm going to stop talking there and look at the cards here. We have an exchanging gifts in the reverse position, in our overall energy. We have the 3 of Cups as the challenge. And then we have in the lesson Sanat Kumara, which is light activation, about shining your light. Your internal guidance is coming through loud and clear. Now, let me just double check this one upside down here. But this talks about giving and receiving in balance, right? Here's the protection. Okay, be careful what you pray for because you just might get it. And then realize you don't want to face the hefty price tag that comes with it. You may find yourself in a situation you've always desired, but know you will have to walk away from or even fail at because you can't or won't pay the dues it asks of you. If you want to be a famous musician, you have to practice your craft every day. If you want to be a millionaire, you have to be responsible for managing the money and paying the taxes. Even a windfall bears a cost. It's okay though, because Spirit will help you achieve balance over time. Another message here reminds you that being only the giver and not the receiver plays out in many relationships in your life, where you find yourself in victim mode, in a codependent dynamic, or holding on to a false sense of control. Others may push you to continue to prove yourself. The time has come to distance yourself from this kind of imbalance. Being aware of the need for both give and take is the first step to your true destiny. It's all good and getting better. Not only can you handle this, but you can flourish as a result. Okay, so I really think the sentence here that's crucial is being aware of the need for both, give and take, right? And this goes into that Gemini energy, understanding that both parties may be right, that both parties may see things in a different way, that there's a question of how we handle these two pieces of information. Now this Three of Cups is interesting here. I want to get more cards. I need more cards to see how this plays out. But the challenge could be that there's, you know, in trying to deal with the two, there's one too many. This may be also, so this is, since it's that Three of Cups again, and that third degree for the Sabian was about enjoying the garden. We may find that we're having a hard time because things are out of balance, or because we're looking at it from an either or standpoint, that we're actually having a hard time being able to enjoy a bigger situation. And this one, like I said, also interesting because this one talks about two, and this is talking about, this is a three. So that whole point of when I said you're going to have to use your intuition and your personal experience to decide whether it's the two or the three, right? So let me get two more cards here for Aries. Get two more cards here for the Aries beginning and ending of this period. What's the beginning and ending energy of this new moon? Okay. Oh, all right. Okay, so this is really interesting. Okay, so follow the leader. Talks about a path, but it came up in reverse, so I'm going to read that. And then the goblins, number 5, also interesting. But also interesting because I was talking about, do you pick the 2 or the 3, even though this is a 9 card, you know, so I'm reading it from a sort of metaphorical point of view. But I was saying you have to pick between the 2 and the 3, and then the 4 and the 5 come up, right? So let me get this, read this for a second. And I just put my finger on this thing, making a choice. So it's really about sort of the duality of information and being able to know what's true for you, you know, and sticking to your experience, your guidance, your light to distinguish whether things are off balance, whether things are enjoyable, not enjoyable, whether you pick between reading the definition for the 2 or reading the definition for the 3. And then let's see what this says. So reverse, the follow the leader card offers a gentle push to get up and take the lead. In a relationship or partnership, be the one to voice what must be said. Muster your courage and speak your needs aloud. Affirm what you like and what you feel. Don't just hope for someone else to fix the problems you see. If your inquiry is about a career or project, you must take the initiative to draw up a proper plan. And if it's about a personal relationship, you must be clear about your intentions and desires. Boldly begin a discussion about how things really are and how to make the situation work for the highest good. Do this as soon as possible. You may be pleasantly surprised by the results. Okay, so that's also interesting. So I have a couple situations here, right? And it's very much about, as we said, the two sides, each having their own position. And so any sort of misconception, misunderstanding is because two people are looking at the same situation from two different vantage points. You don't have to have your vantage point swayed by others, and you can trust your own intuition, but it is also imperative that you voice and explain to the person who's looking at it differently how it is that you see the world, right? Because unless there's an exchanging gifts, exchanging of viewpoints, exchanging of, hey, this is how I see it, hey, this is how I see it, there can be no celebration, right? Because it's constantly going to be an either or. And remember, this is saying that there is both give and take. So the person who feels that they're giving is not seeing the taking side. The person who is taking is not seeing the giving side. So it's really about a moment of trusting that your experience, that your lived experience of what you're living is correct to you based on your experience, but also understanding that it may not be visible in the same way to people who are outside of your experience. And that in order to sort of get everybody on the same page, you have to be willing to share the way it is that you're seeing your version of that conundrum, right? Is it a 2 or is it a 3? Now let's look at the 5 here, this goblins. So goblins are born when you're wounded and something essential is lost in that experience. From that point on, as you forget your wholeness, they remain with you in the shadows. There they remind you of what brought them into being by mimicking your own voice, tricking you into believing that you're unworthy, victimized, or unlovable. They hold you hostage through low self-worth, self-sabotage, and the feeling that you're lacking what you need. If goblins pay you a visit, know that they represent the shadow of your own self or someone else's, and that they're leading you into a potentially reactive situation. A goblin's card appearance is an opportunity for growth, however, and a signal that you must love yourself. No human is without flaws. The goblin's message is that you must release resentments and negative self-talk. Within you is the spark of the divine. Ask Spirit to help heal you. Miracles can and do happen. Let go of the negativity. Interesting. So this brings in an element that the conversation, is it a 2, is it a 3, might be within yourself. And so you may be creating your own scenario of where you're, despite what you know is right, that things need to be equal, that things should be fun, right? So this to me is kind of like for people with relationship problems that are maybe talking themselves out of not leaving, or out of not walking away from a situation that is clearly not healthy, that your own self-talk can talk you into a very dangerous corner where you actually relinquish your own viewpoint in order to accept that one of the others. So I would say in people who are struggling in relationships like that, it's really about right now giving credence and strength and space and respect to your own perspective and your own point of view. And if you're living in a situation where you're being forced to send down someone else's truth and not giving yours any space, this is really a time where that's going to kind of blow that up. Like, not so much information will come out about what's not working or where the discrepancy is, where things are not being met eye to eye, that it may, and particularly with these eclipses coming up, there's little Zoe walking through, that you may find that over the course of the next few months, it will be impossible to ignore that there is another option, right? That right now, in that whole metaphor of the 2 or the 3, that you've been accepting that it has to be the 2, but there's also another option, and that's the 3. And maybe that one is actually resonates more with your personal experience. Now let's get 3 cards, please, here for Aries. 3 cards for Aries. There's the 3. So 3 of Wands. Let's see what else we have. The Hermit. One more card, please, for Aries. Wait, okay, and the 9. Interesting. Oh, and there's some secret more cards out there. So we have a 9. All of these are repeated here. And like I said, you're going to get more information than you asked for. Holy shit, I love it. There's the 2 and the 3. And I was going to say before, like, if I get a 2, I'll die. But I actually got the 2 and the 3. So this is to tell me that I got the right metaphor there. So I'm going to leave these 3 cards and these 2 cards here below, which make the 5, which is coming up here. Okay, so very interesting. And we have a 9 and a 9 and a 9. So the 9 is repeated 3 times, as are the 3s. 3 times 3, 9. Okay, very interesting. So, like I said, I read in patterns, mathematical patterns. So we know that this is sort of a tight story. Now, what this says to me is this guy's waiting for his ships to come in, right? And this guy's got him. And in between these 2 is the Hermit, which is about understanding, perspective, sort of the Virgo card. Virgo is also a mutable sign, and Virgo is very much about perfection in context, right? Trying to achieve a sense of perfection based on whatever new information comes at you. Now, this reminds me very much about the 2 Sabians. Just calling them up here. You know, Santa filling stockings furtively, so waiting for something to happen. And this one, the charming court life at the Garden of the Tuileries in Paris, being able to enjoy and appreciate it. And I know there's a lot of messages here. I did say that was going to be the downside of the Gemini moment. But the difference between waiting for your ships to come in and feeling like you've got a sense of abundance is really going to be a question of perspective, right? Going back to that whole 2 or the 3. It depends on how you see the world, whether you're going to say, I want to read the 2nd Sabian of the Santa, or I want to read the charming court life one. But it doesn't mean that either or are wrong, right? It's just which one you choose to see based on your life experience, based on your spiritual teachings, based on what you've held true to this day. So there is a sort of a difference in perspective of how life is being experienced. And it may be within you, it may be within your relationships. One person in the relationship may say, no, I'm still waiting for things to show up. And the other person be like, but I feel like we have everything, right? And it's a question of how you are looking at the situation. These 2 people can never get on the same page unless they talk, right? Unless they're clear on, well, what exactly is it are you waiting for, right? Well, what exactly do you think we have? Or even in your situation, right? It's like, well, sometimes when you have career things, the company will say, no, I think I'm paying you enough. And you're like, well, really, I don't see that as being the case at all. And it's not necessarily wrong. You're both right. It's just a matter of how you're looking at that situation. But in order for there to feel like there's a sense of celebration or teamwork, what's important is the sharing of information, facing sort of like having the courage to have the hard conversations. So it doesn't end up in this sort of analysis paralysis. And this is very much a risk of Gemini. You can get so much information thrown at you that you don't know what to do. And oh, interesting. These add up to 9 also. So interesting. So the 9 is interesting because it also implies that we're coming to a close of a cycle, which would be correct because the next lunar eclipse is going to be wrapping up the whole the Capricorn Cancer eclipses. So this understanding of perspectives and sort of realigning on how people see things is going to bring a situation to the end of a chapter. I'm not saying the end of the situation, but it will close out a very specific period and allow it to move into something new. So right now, I would say get clear on how you're like, so if you're having a situation where you don't know what to do, right? Or there's some sort of standstill, and it has to do either with yourself or it has to do with another person. Wherever things are not moving, and there's a block, again, mental, professional, romantic. Wherever there is that's a block, what's blocking it is a difference of perspective. That one sees things one way and the other sees things in the other way. And without sort of, and it's interesting that without sort of going through the light and dark of the situation, because this was talking about expanding the shadows, and this says, to kind of go into your light, without understanding what lies beneath what's going on. Why might that person think that way? What sort of dark shadows could be lying beneath this behavior or that perspective? Or if they're behaving so poorly, what sort of light can come out of this situation? What gift could be furtively coming to me through a sort of dark activity? So understanding very much the light and shadow of the situation in order to examine it in a new light. Understanding both perspectives. Is there another way I can look at this same situation? Am I looking at it from standing on my chair, or am I looking at it from a lower point of view, right? Am I the seller or the buyer? Because these two see the same thing in a very different way. And so in an effort to get aligned on perspective so that things come into balance and there's a clear path forward where it doesn't feel like one person is following the leader, but it feels like it's an exchange, a proper exchange of ideas and gifts. Here's the gift that I have. Here's the gift that I have. How can we not make it that I have to do what you are telling me, but that we're actually sharing with each other, that we're working together, even with our different perspectives, towards something worth celebrating. Okay? Wild trip. I gotta tell you, the energy here, like I said, finger in the plug sort of energy. Let's take a look at these cards. Now, this is my Mercury deck, and basically what this deck is it's called the Divination of the Ancients, and it talks about the different ways in which we receive messages and how messages are going to be coming to us. So I'd like to look at it, particularly when there's a lot of heavy Mercury energy, because it gives us a clue on where to tune in. Like if we have a hard time accessing our intuition, or again, sometimes when we get into this place, we can't see things clearly because we've been looking at them from our perspective so long, and so we need sort of a different view and able to sort of break out of that shell. And I find that these cards help to do it. And so I'm going to read these cards and then I'm going to pull a final advice card. I forgot to do that, but I'm assuming that this disorder is intentional. Okay, so this first one says pendulum, and it's about a decision. And let's see here what it says. There are many paths before you, some that promise to fulfill your desires, and some that others in your life would bid you take to fulfill theirs. Very interesting. That feeds into this card. It is important for you to decide exactly where you want to go and whom you want to be in this lifetime, for you and not for anybody else. The universe is giving you the choice. Ask yourself, which path will lead to wholeness? Interesting, because this talks about wholeness too. Which path deceives? Choose carefully, for the answers are not being presented clearly to you at this time. You would be wise to call upon the pendulum to assist you with your decision, for it will surely show you the truthful way. Do not take this lightly, as the wrong path could detour you from your destiny. I have a debate on that, but whatever. Okay, other divinatory meanings. Seek your answers from within rather than from another. Trust your own wise counsel. Be more discerning. Don't take others' advice at face value. Release guilt and focus on what's best for you. A major decision will soon need to be made. Interesting about the guilt and this goblins, right? And remember, I was saying that sometimes it's us that we talk ourselves into sort of the dark space. And that may come from a sense of feeling guilty about things that have happened in our past. So if that's, if you're not moving forward or not celebrating in joy because you feel guilty about something, and that guilt is keeping you in a sense of imbalance, that really needs, then this like tuning into your light and trusting that the way you see things is right for your path, and that someone else's path is going to have them looking at the same thing in a different way, that there is no absolute either or. That will help free you into what to do next. Let's get this one. The dictionary. So communication. Okay, you are overthinking things. True Gemini. Stop trying to analyze every conversation, every word, every thought. It's time to shift from the control of the logical and analytical left brain and explore the creative, intuitive right brain, which will help you find clarity, inspiration, and peace of mind. This message also serves as a reminder to listen to others, particularly when they are offering help. Be careful not to dismiss advice, for often it comes as an answer to your prayers. You are like a closed book, and people find it hard to read you. Interesting. It's time to open up and share your thoughts and feelings, as this will bring greater understanding and deeper meaning to your relationships. And the incantation, I'm going to read this one because the other one wasn't as interesting. The incantation here is, did I say? Communication is the key to connecting purposefully. And it goes on to say, other divinatory meanings are listen well, as important words, be they spoken to you by a friend or stranger, or written down and placed before you in a note or card, will point you to your next step. Try to understand someone else's point of view. Meditate to quiet your mind. Speak with confidence. Your life purpose involves writing and public speaking. Okay, and then let's get this last one here. This is the shooting star, and it says confirmation. Interesting. So that's interesting. They're sort of like in a row here. Shooting star. This is a magical moment. The universe is poised to respond to your wishes, and this card has turned up to confirm that it is so. You have felt this for a while, but haven't fully allowed yourself to believe it. But it's time to trust your feelings and know that all is perfectly fine. In fact, it's better than fine. You are truly blessed with heightened manifestation abilities right now, so take this opportunity to bring about all that you desire. Ride this shooting star through the cosmos, fill up on mystical stardust, and know that whatever you wish for at this time will be granted. Other divinatory meanings are, your focus and positivity bring you good fortune. All you have hoped for is about to be realized. Keep your thoughts positive, for your manifestation abilities are strong and can turn the outcome either way. Be careful what you wish for. Oh, interesting, because also this one said be careful what you wish for. Because if you get it, right, and this is what this one said also, Be careful what you wish for, because if you get it, there may be a price to pay, and you have to be willing to pay that price, right? Just like if you want to be a great musician, you have to, it's going to take a lot of work, right? And do you want to be a great, and that will, so it's sort of like that price that you have to pay will determine whether you really wanted to do it, or whether it was kind of like what was told to you to do. I don't know if that makes sense. Can I get one advice card, please, for Aries for this new moon? It's Gemini new moon. Ooh, Spear of the Guru Mother, Goddess Durga, and Hematite. Let's see what we have here. I'll read this quick because it's getting long. Okay. We bring you the empowerment of the Spear of the Guru Mother. Sometimes there's so much choice that we struggle to commit. Also Gemini. It is often not an issue of unwillingness to make an effort, but concern that the choice might not be the right choice. There we go. We might pray to the universe to be shown what to do according to a wisdom greater than our own. Although our free will is always in place, we are unable to accept a task divinely given or reject it. The universe answers every prayer. In your heart, you have been asking for guidance to be shown what you need to do in a particular situation, or perhaps more generally in your life at this time. You want to know the best way forward so your actions are in alignment with heaven. In response, you have now become the Spear of the Guru Mother. The Spear of the Guru Mother is the direct, focused, and clear task given to you by the fiercely compassionate Divine Feminine. She is the unconditionally loving guide who will protect your soul, keeping you on the straight and narrow, and ensure that your efforts bring you the best spiritual results and not lead you off into a distracting and ultimately unnecessary tangent. Although you can choose whether or not you wish to accept the task, know that it has been divinely bestowed upon you. How do you know which task this is? Oh, this is great. Look to your life. What's happening? What's possible for you to act upon? Where is your growth edge? What are you currently empowered to do? That's your task. Do what you can and do it now. Okay, I'm going to close there because that feels like a perfect answer. This may have come for those people here. Anyway, very full reading, lots of different situations. Pay attention to your standoffs, pay attention to the perspective that you are applying to a situation, and listen to the perspective of the other person to try and understand what's sort of guiding their vision. If you have things you're not saying, if you're accepting too much another person's point of view, it's time for you to trust your own truth and speak up. If you are your own naysayer, if you are self-talking, guilting yourself out of the things that you want and desire, out of things that bring you pleasure, out of the things that allow you to see the difference between already having abundance and constantly waiting for it, watch that dark and go into the light. Trust that your perspective is yours because it's what you were given to do, right? You don't have to have another person's perspective that didn't have your life experience. The way you see things is the way you need to see things. It doesn't mean you need to impart that vision on someone else who has a different path, a different journey, and a different past. But it doesn't mean yours is any less valid. It means leave space for yours, but also leave space for the other person to have their own experience. Relationships that are out of balance need to be brought back into balance through communications and expressing your point of view and sharing equally. Here's the give and here's the take, and listen also to the other person's perspective on that to see where things are out of whack. why there isn't a celebration. There may be a third party involved that we don't know about. You know, and just be very sort of conscious of the way you're looking at the situation. Are you the buyer or the seller in the situation? Are you the giver or the taker? Like, which one of the perspectives are you looking at the same situation from? Okay, that's enough. Have a lovely new moon, and I will see you at the next moon, which is an eclipse. Yikes. Actually, I'll see you for the first half June, but then again for the next moon, which will be an eclipse one. Take care.